a value speech, harnessing his power of oratory to not just policy and a little bit about his opponent, but to a statement of citizenship, to a very literate and literary digression about humility, lacing of humility throughout the speech, talking about hard times. And from this president, something we are not used to hearing, an overt request for a vote. I'm asking for your vote. Chris Matthews in Charlotte.
Well, I think tonight he did it again, didn't he? But more than that, the profound thing he accomplished tonight, the president, was to turn the whole table on those who thought that the incumbency would be a problem and the challenger would have it easy. The most powerful statement tonight he made is, I am the president. I am the president. And you're not. And I've had to do the tough things of leading this country, and you haven't. And you don't have a clue about foreign policy. It's all new to you. And you think all we have to do is take 2 tax cuts to solve our common cold because you don't have a clue as to how to solve this country's challenges. It was a profound statement of, I've got the best position in this country and in this race because I am doing the job, and you're just twiddling your fingers thinking about what it might be like to be president. And that is huge, because we all thought the problem was defending the way things are, and he's made the opponents defend the fact they don't know what's going on.
Oh boy.
Development, that speaks. What a home run that was.
For me, some of my favorite lines, one of my favorite lines came fairly early on, and it was this discussion of bold, persistent experimentation that Franklin Roosevelt pursued. And it was, I think, as Chris said, this is part of turning that incumbency around as an advantage and saying, no, I'm not here to say that I got it all right, but what I did do was to pursue this bold, persistent experimentation. I thought the other key was saying, I didn't do it. You did it. You are responsible for every success. You are responsible for every success.
I thought the president tonight had one of the strongest finishes, very passionate. But tonight, the president went after where he has been attacked and mocked by the right wing about hope and change. He specifically pointed out what is different in this country under his leadership. The health care, the education, the immigration, and the don't ask, don't tell. And he was referring back to the people who had spoken previously in this convention. Very well coordinated convention, very well coordinated message, and about the hope, he put it on the American people. He made me feel good tonight. He made the American people feel good tonight, and he gave us confidence. He pointed out what we've been through, what we can get through, and where we're going. It was a very visionary speech, and it was vintage Barack Obama.
You're the reason, you're the reason, you're the reason. You did that, you did that, you did that. We'll bring in Reverend Al Sharpton, also from Charlotte. Right?
Well, I think among other things, the president, as he always has since I've known him, defied expectation. We heard people say after his wife spoke, what's he going to be able to do behind this? After Bill Clinton, I think that he, as he always does, didn't listen to the chatter. He made an epic speech tonight, and he did it because he was substantive. He laid out policy, he laid out exactly what he's going to do, but he also brought a bigger vision, and at the same time, he's been criticized a lot on this hope and change. He elevated hope and change. He didn't give it up. He says we're still going to deal with hope. We're still going to deal with change. We've had a hard way to go. That's what hope and change is. So he handed back what people ridiculed to them. He handed it back on a silver platter, laid out policies, and reduced his opponents to just some people that are chattering somewhere in Never Never Land. I think that Barack Obama won the election tonight.
Steve Schmidt, you heard Al Sharpton there saying he thinks the
I was struck by the expressions of humility in the speech. I was struck by the appeal to the center of the electorate, the celebration of entrepreneurship, the acknowledgement that government isn't always the answer, that it's charities and multiple times. I don't think the Democrats could have possibly done a better job this week in building a case for the president's reelection. I think their convention was a home run. Now we have to wait for the verdict. Did this convention move the numbers? Did it change the dynamic in the race? Did it close the economic numbers where he's been lagging behind Mitt Romney? did it give a booster shot, as Chris has talked about, of optimism to a pessimistic electorate that thinks the country's on the wrong track? The president tonight attacked from positions which heretofore have been weaknesses. He went right after the Republican ticket. It was an effective speech, as almost all of his speeches are. But we'll see over the next couple of days how the country reacts to it. Does he have a bounce out of this convention? Is he able to open up a lead?
I thought it was interesting, the division of labor between what Bill Clinton did and what the president did. Bill Clinton, and I don't know if they coordinated this, but Bill Clinton, it was wholly a defense of the record. It was backward looking, almost entirely. This speech, and it's very interesting to think about the terms upon which they want this election to be fought. A choice, not a referendum, and the future rather than the present, right? If it's a referendum on the present with 8% unemployment and people feeling out of sorts and anxious, that's where they're weakest. If it's a choice about the future, that's where they're strongest. And the entirety of this, there was not that much about the record. There were mentions of health care, but they were largely oblique. It was about focusing the electorate forward, which is, of course, the slogan they're using. Values. And it was also, interestingly, in certain places, very workmanlike. I mean, it was not soaring, and I think it was not soaring, except for a few parts, particularly the ending, for the reason that they're very cognizant of this kind of tightrope they have to walk about people feeling anxious and out of sorts, people being very cognizant of how broken and dysfunctional our politics still feel 4 years after his election, and not bringing to the fore the juxtaposition between the boundlessness of some of that excitement and hope 4 years ago and the reality of how difficult it has been and will continue to be.
I think one of the things that's happened, and it's not just been from the right, it's been from our ironic and cynical culture, has been that since Barack Obama was elected president, it has become something you're supposed to be embarrassed about, that you might be moved by politics. Right. That the idea hope and change are a punchline, right? And that the idea that you would think that you would be able to expect anything, but also able to feel anything about politics, is some sort of weakness, some sort of sign of naivete. And I was moved by the speech. I find it moving, and I'm happy to be moved. And I think it's a sort of cynicism eraser. I mean, when he says, he ad-libs, you did that, you did that, you did that. If you turn away now, if you buy into the cynicism that the change we fought for isn't possible, well, change will not happen. If you give up on the idea that your voice can make a difference, then other voices will fill the void. And at that point, I thought, right, that's the other side of it. If you think you can't do it, there are plenty of very cynical forces that will do it. Lobbyists and special interests, the people with the $10 million checks who are trying to buy this election, and those who are making it harder for you to vote, Washington politicians who want to decide who you can marry or control health choices that women should make for themselves. Bringing it to policy and to specific enemies, but in a way that is about believing in politics.
Well, and also jettisoning the notion that other specific enemies are the enemy. I mean, he stopped and said, okay, these are not the things that are the enemy. People on welfare are not the enemy. People who are gay and lesbian are not the enemy. So he very specifically said, let me be clear about, what the other side is telling you is the problem. That's not the problem. I recognize we have problems. Here are the problems. Here's how we'll address them. It's not your fellow citizens.
It's our democracy.
Our democracy.
To go back to the Biden speech, if we can, because we didn't have a chance to touch on that. Joe Biden talked about the paycheck. He talked about dignity and humility, in a sense explaining what Americans go through. Almost a Clinton line, we feel your pain, we're not there yet. We have empathy for you, and we're going to get there. We're working towards a better America. We're not going to leave behind the people that have struggled in this economy. On one hand, they got a lot to brag about. The number of months of job creation, the automobile industry, we've heard a lot about that. There was a tremendous tribute to the military tonight, a tremendous tribute to the veterans and those who have sacrificed. And that coordinates in with what the president's been talking about all along, shared sacrifice. And he hit that again tonight in his speech. So between former President Clinton, between Joe Biden, and between the president's speeches tonight, they were all different elements, all packaged together, all on the testimonial. I thought it was fantastic.
Lawrence O'Donnell is in Charlotte, is in the hall, was able to hear the speech in person. Lawrence, I have to get your reaction, but also just your observations of what it was like seeing the president speak there tonight.
Well, in this crowd, Rachel, it was obviously a love fest. This was his third convention speech. I think most people in this crowd fell in love with him at his first convention speech at John Kerry's convention. And remember, the challenge for Barack Obama was not so much to top Bill Clinton or top previous speakers. One of the challenges for Barack Obama is how does he top Barack Obama? In the previous two convention speeches that have led up to this and have built up the highest expectation that any presidential nominees ever had for a speech. And of course, an incumbent speech always includes challenges that are not there for the first-time nominee. Those challenges include a record, and a record that will always have been, to some extent, circumscribed, limited by the opposition in Congress. The president began with a little bit of a defense that wasn't presented defensively. He said it will take more than a few years to solve challenges that have built up over decades. That is the essential case that he has to win in terms of this record. He doesn't need to fight the details. Chris's point about division of labor in the speeches here is very important. Yes, every single word of every speech delivered in this convention hall, in every convention hall, is coordinated with the nominee's speech. There are people working to make sure that that division of labor is spread out in the right places. You saw Joe Biden dealing with issues that the president didn't have to deal with quite as thoroughly in his speech. And Rachel, he did have to take on hope and change. He did have to defend what has become of hope and change. He said that hope is you, speaking to the voters. He said that you did that when he started to list the accomplishments of his administration, that there are children in America today who can get their third surgeries by the time they're 6 years old because they have not worn out the lifetime limit on their health insurance policies. And he correctly said that you did that. And what he means is the people who voted for the Obama presidency are the people who actually delivered that change to this country. And what is hope if not a vote? What is a vote if it isn't an expression of hope? And so, of course, what he's asking for is hope in this administration and in this team going forward. And he is saying that the next time you cast your vote, of course, it will be an expression of hope. And he made the case tonight as to why a voter can reasonably hope for the change that you would want to see in the next 4 years by voting for this presidency to continue.
The addressing of the issue of hope, transferring it away from himself as a political celebrity and putting it on people to believe in the possibility of change. That is what I find moving as a person who is a civics dork. I find that moving as a person who really does believe in the project of collective